Who's at your home right now? My neighbor asked, his voice trembling. I almost laughed when I first heard it. Daniel's house smelled like roasted chicken, garlic butter, and fresh bread. The chatter of his kids in the next room, the clinking of cutlery, the occasional burst of laughter, it all wrapped around me like a warm blanket. For once, I felt safe, detached from my own lonely house, detached from everything I didn't want to think about. And then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mr. Lewis, my neighbor. At first, I almost ignored it. He was a good man but talkative, always wanting to discuss lawn care, fences, or some neighborhood rumor. I just wanted to enjoy the evening. But something in me, it was instinct, made me swipe. Accept. Hey, Mr. Lewis, I said casually, pressing the phone against my ear while balancing my plate. His voice cracked through the line, sharp and uneven. Who's at your home right now? I froze mid-bite. What? I chuckled nervously, glancing around at Daniel, who was too busy pouring wine to notice. What do you mean? He inhaled sharply, the sound rasping like he was trying to steady himself. I asked you, who's inside your house? The room around me blurred. The sound of laughter felt far away, like muffled echoes through water. I'm not home, I muttered, lowering my voice. I'm here. At Daniel's. I know you're not home. His tone cut me off. There was no hesitation now, just urgency. That's why I'm asking. Because someone is. My stomach tightened. My fork clattered against the plate. What do you mean someone is? My voice came out sharper than I intended. I saw movement, he whispered, through your living room window. A man. He wasn't rushing. He was calm. Like he belonged there. My grip on the phone slickened with sweat. Are you sure? I tried to sound steady, but my throat was dry. Don't play games with me, son, he snapped, and then his voice softened, almost trembling. I've lived next to you for 10 years. I know when something's wrong. I'm telling you, I saw him. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking to Daniel again. He finally noticed my pale face. You okay? Daniel asked, brow furrowing. I forced a tight smile, shaking my head quickly. Yeah? Just give me a second. I turned away, pressing the phone harder to my ear. Mr. Lewis, what exactly did you see? There was a pause, a long exhale that made my chest constrict. He stood there for a while, looking at your shelves. Then, his breath hitched. Then he looked toward the window, like he knew I was watching. The image stabbed through me. A stranger, inside my house, looking back. I pressed my palm to my forehead, heat rising. Did you call the cops? I wanted to, but I didn't want to overstep if it was family. His words stuttered, his confidence cracking. That's why I called you first. Just tell me the truth. Did you leave someone inside? My pulse thudded in my ears. No. Nobody. I locked up. My voice faded as realization clawed at me. Had I? The chicken smell turned sour in my nostrils. The cozy atmosphere now felt suffocating. Listen, Mr. Lewis said quickly, urgency swelling again. If you're not home, you need to get there. Now. Because whoever's inside isn't acting like they're leaving anytime soon. His words punched straight into me. I couldn't sit still. My legs twitched under the table, muscles screaming to move. Daniel mouthed something at me, confused. I waved him off, shoving my chair back. The scrape of the chair against the floor made everyone look at me. Sorry, I muttered, forcing my lips into a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I need to step out. Everything okay? Daniel asked again, but his voice was distant. I couldn't answer. My mind was already racing through streets, locks, windows. My house. Stay on the line, I demanded, my voice sharp. I will, Mr. Lewis said quickly. Then softer, almost like a warning. Be careful. He's still in there. The phone slipped slightly in my sweaty grip. Every laugh, every flicker of warmth around me, turned foreign. The world I had been enjoying only moments ago collapsed into something cold, jagged. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even grab dessert. I just grabbed my coat, my keys, and my pounding heart, because I had to see for myself. The lights in my house were on. I knew I had left them off. My chest tightened the moment I saw it. A faint yellow glow seeped through the curtains, casting crooked lines across the damp street. The drizzle had stopped an hour ago, but the smell of wet soil still clung to the air, thick and earthy. Every step I took toward my house felt wrong, like I was walking into someone else's life. My neighbor's words replayed, over and over. I saw someone by your back door. What if he hadn't been mistaken? What if I really had left a window cracked open? I gripped the keys so tight they cut into my palm. My hands were clammy, trembling, but I kept walking. The silence pressed on me, heavier than any noise could have been. No dogs barking, no cars passing, just the faint hum of electricity from the street lamp flickering above. I stopped at the gate, staring at my own front door like it was a stranger. Why the hell are the lights on? I knew every detail of my evening. Before leaving, I'd clicked each switch off with deliberate care. I even remembered the soft click of the living room lamp going dark. And yet, there it was, glowing back at me, as if mocking me. Maybe the power surged, I whispered to myself, though I didn't believe it. My throat felt raw, and when I swallowed, it echoed in my head like a gunshot. I forced my legs forward, up the short path. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes, louder than ever, like it wanted to announce my arrival to whoever was inside. I fumbled with the keys, metal scraping against metal. My hand was shaking too much to aim properly. Then, something shifted. Through the living room window, behind the half-drawn curtain, a shape moved. Quick, slender, almost gliding. I froze, heart hammering so loud I thought it might shake the glass. There's someone in there. My first thought wasn't to run. It should have been. But something about the way the shadow moved, it was too calm, too confident, like they already knew I was standing outside, watching. I backed up a step, chest heaving. Then my phone buzzed. The sound ripped through the silence like a scream. I nearly dropped it. The screen lit up with my neighbor's name. I answered in a whisper. Hello? Are you home yet? His voice was tight, urgent. I'm outside, I said. My eyes stayed glued to the window, searching for the shadow again. The lights are on. I didn't. He cut me off. Don't go in. Do you understand? Don't. Why? Did you see something else? My voice cracked. There was a pause, the kind of pause that tells you something is terribly wrong. I thought I saw someone in your bedroom, he finally said. His breath sounded shaky, like he hated himself for admitting it. My stomach lurched. The bedroom. Upstairs. That's impossible, I muttered, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. The line crackled. Call the police. I looked at the keys in my fist. Call the police. That would be smart, safe, the logical choice. But my gut twisted with something else, something darker. If someone was in my house, touching my things, walking through rooms that held pieces of me, I couldn't just stand outside like a helpless spectator. I'll check first, I whispered. Don't be stupid, he hissed. Wait for the cops. But I ended the call before he could finish. My pulse was thundering, my thoughts a tangled mess of fear and anger. I turned back to the door, slid the key into the lock, and twisted. The click was deafening. I held my breath, listening. No footsteps, no creaks, just silence. Slowly, I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, faint, metallic, like iron. The air inside was warmer than outside, heavy, almost suffocating. Hello? My voice was barely audible, trembling. Nothing. The hallway looked normal. Shoes lined up neatly by the wall. My jacket still hanging on the hook. But the glow of the living room lamp spilled into the hall like an invitation. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me with a soft thud. The sound made my skin crawl. I was sealed in now. No easy way out. My feet carried me forward, each step sinking into the carpet with exaggerated softness. My ears strained for any sound, breathing, shifting, the squeak of a floorboard. When I reached the living room, I stopped cold. The lamp was on, just as I'd seen from outside. But the furniture looked disturbed. The coffee table had been nudged out of place. One of the coasters was on the floor. And the curtains, drawn unevenly, as though someone had pulled them back too quickly. My mouth went dry. And then movement. Through the thin fabric of the curtain, a silhouette stretched across the wall, tall and deliberate. It wasn't the trick of light this time. It was real. My pulse roared in my ears. Someone was in my house. I clenched the keys tighter in my fist, the jagged edges digging into my skin like makeshift weapons. My breath came shallow, every inhale shaky. I forced myself toward the window, toward the shadow. My heart pounded with each step. And then, it moved again. Smooth, slow, as if whoever it was wanted me to see them. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. And through the glass, clear as day, I saw the outline of a man's head turn toward me. And then, through the window, I saw a shadow move. A stranger was standing in my living room, touching my memories like they were his own. I froze, my hand pressed against the cold glass, breath fogging the window. My heart wasn't just beating, it was thrashing, slamming against my ribs as if it wanted out. The man didn't look frantic or hurried, the way a thief should. No, he was calm, deliberate. Each page of my photo album turned slowly beneath his fingers, like he was savoring the images. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. The faint creak of floorboards echoed as he shifted his weight, his shoes making lazy arcs against my rug. He leaned back into my couch like he'd been there 100 times before. His smirk wasn't just confidence, it was ownership. I crouched lower by the window, hiding behind the curtain's edge, my pulse roaring in my ears. Who the hell are you? He wasn't just rummaging, he was studying. His thumb lingered on one particular photograph, me, my sister, and my parents, a summer barbecue years ago. His head tilted slightly, a predator analyzing prey. My breath caught. He flipped to another. A family Christmas, then another, my college graduation, and then I realized something chilling. He wasn't just looking, he was remembering. That smirk stretched wider, but his jaw twitched, almost imperceptibly. A micro-expression. He wasn't as calm as he wanted to appear. There was tension behind the performance. Rage clawed up my throat. He was touching my memories, the pieces of my life, like they were his trophies. Fear coiled tighter, but anger kept it from swallowing me whole. I whispered under my breath, "What do you want?" Even though he couldn't hear me. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I flinched, fumbling to silence it. My neighbor's name lit up. I didn't answer. If I spoke, if I made noise, he might hear. Instead, I edged closer to the side window, my body pressed flat against the wall. My fingertips were icy, shaking. I peeked again. The man's shoulders rose and fell in an almost relaxed rhythm. He set the photo album aside carefully, like it was precious to him. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his palms together. Not nervous, anticipating. My gut twisted. He wasn't here to steal. He was here for me. But his face, it tugged at something in the back of my mind. Not entirely a stranger. Familiar, but distant, like a blurry memory I couldn't place. His profile in the lamplight, the curve of his jaw, even the way he tilted his head, it all scratched at something I didn't want to remember. I clenched the keys tighter in my hand, metal edges biting into skin. Then, without warning, he spoke. "I know you're out there." His voice was deep, casual, but dripping with control. My breath hitched. He hadn't turned his head, hadn't even shifted his body. He was still facing the photo albums, flipping a page with exaggerated calm. But his words were aimed outward. A performance. I stayed frozen, every muscle screaming to run, but my feet rooted to the ground. He chuckled lightly, the sound dry and mocking. "You always were slow to catch on." My stomach flipped. Always. He knew me. I pressed my forehead against the glass, the chill burning my skin. Think, where have I seen him? As if sensing my panic, he stood. Smooth, unhurried, like a teacher rising from a desk. He began pacing the room, hands clasped behind his back. The mask of calm stayed, but I saw it. His left hand twitched when he thought it was hidden, nervous energy leaking through the cracks. "You keep the same furniture," he said, almost to himself. "The couch, the rug, even the curtains. All these years and you never change." My lungs seized. Years? I wanted to shout through the glass, to demand who he was, but the words stuck in my throat. My mind raced instead. A relative? A family friend? Someone from my childhood? His smirk sharpened, as if he could read my thoughts. "You don't remember me yet, do you?" My heart stumbled. He stopped pacing and bent down, picking up one of the pictures again. This time, he held it up, staring at it for too long before turning it outward, facing the window. It was the summer barbecue photo. My stomach sank. He tapped the glass frame with one finger. "Look closely. I was there too, just outside the frame." I swallowed hard, bow rising. My skin prickled with cold sweat. What is he talking about? Then, slowly, finally, he lifted his head. His eyes met mine through the window. Not a glance, not an accident, a deliberate, direct stare. My entire body jolted as if he'd reached through the glass and touched me, and in that instant, with the lamplight cutting across his face, I knew he wasn't a stranger at all. Then he looked up, straight at me through the glass. He opened the door before I could, like he belonged inside. The click of the lock made my skin crawl. I stumbled back, gripping the cold keys in my fists like a weapon, though they shook violently in my hand. The night air wrapped around me, sharp and damp, carrying the faint scent of rain. But as the door creaked wide, another smell hit me, stale cigarette smoke, clinging thick to his jacket like a second skin. He stepped into the doorway with a slowness that felt deliberate, calculated. His eyes locked on mine, steady, unblinking. Not a flicker of hesitation. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't warmth, it was mockery stitched into flesh. "You shouldn't leave your house so vulnerable," he said. His tone was calm, conversational even, but every word dripped with disdain. I felt the muscles in my arm tighten, knuckles whitening around the keys. My throat burned as words scraped out. "Who the hell are you?" His smirk deepened. No answer. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like a scientist watching a test subject squirm. My anger rose with the silence. "I asked you a question?" My voice cracked, anger and fear bleeding together. Finally he moved. Not toward me, past me. He stepped down off the porch, his shoes crunching against the damp gravel. His stride was unhurried, too controlled. He wasn't running, wasn't hiding. He wanted me to watch him leave. I darted forward, blocking his path halfway down the walkway. "Stop right there." My heart hammered, but adrenaline forced the words out. "You don't just walk out of my house like nothing happened. What were you doing in there?" His expression shifted, just barely. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. Amusement. His eyes flicked toward my clenched fist, noticing the way the keys rattled faintly. He chuckled, a low, rasping sound. "You're shaking." That single observation cut deeper than any threat. "I'm not asking again," I said, my voice louder now, echoing off the quiet street. "Why were you in my house?" For a moment, his mask cracked. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw set tight. But he smoothed it over quickly with another forced smirk. "You really don't remember, do you?" His tone was soft, almost pitying. The words burrowed into my chest. "Remember? What are you talking about?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached slowly into his jacket pocket. My stomach flipped. I braced myself for a knife, a gun, anything. But his hand emerged with something small, glinting in the dim porch light. He stepped closer, closing the gap between us. His presence pressed against me like a physical weight. He opened my palm with surprising gentleness, curling my trembling fingers outward, and then he dropped it into my hand. Cold metal. Familiar. My breath stopped. I looked down. It was my mother's bracelet. My throat tightened as though a hand gripped it from the inside. My late mother's bracelet, the one I kept hidden deep in my drawer. A place no stranger should have known. A place even I hadn't opened in months. I staggered back, the bracelet clinking softly as it settled in my palm. My voice came out a broken whisper. How do you have this?" His eyes gleamed. "You hide things, but you never hide them well enough." Every nerve in my body screamed. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't random. This was personal. "You went through my room," I snapped, louder now, fury overtaking the fear. "You've been here before, haven't you?" He didn't deny it. He only gave me that same quiet smile, though now his lip twitched faintly at the corner, betraying tension. My fists clenched around the bracelet, the edges digging painfully into my skin. "Why? Why me?" He leaned in slightly, close enough for me to smell the stale smoke mixed with something bitter, metallic. His whisper brushed my ear. "Because you're the one who forgot." A shiver tore through me. I stumbled back again, clutching the bracelet as if it were a lifeline. His gaze lingered on me for a moment longer, sharp and unreadable. And then, just as calmly as he'd arrived, he turned. He walked down the street, disappearing into the shadows, his pace steady, unhurried. Like he knew I wouldn't follow. Like he wanted me paralyzed right there. I stood frozen, the silence of the neighborhood pressing down like a weight. My chest heaved with ragged breaths, and the bracelet burned cold in my palm. This wasn't random. This wasn't about a house left unlocked. This was about me. And in my hand, he left a piece of my past. The bracelet wasn't just stolen, it was a message. Cold metal pressed into my palm like a brand, like someone had reached inside my chest and yanked out the one thing I thought was safe, untouched. I couldn't stop staring at it. My mother's bracelet, the one I kept hidden under layers of old receipts and socks, was now sitting in my hand, tainted, invaded, proof that someone had been where no one should have been. My stomach knotted. I yanked open drawers, tossing clothes onto the floor. I checked under the bed, inside boxes stacked in the closet. Papers, photos, letters, everything felt contaminated, touched. He knew. Whoever he was, he knew me. A knock startled me so hard I nearly dropped the bracelet. "Hey!" My neighbor's voice cut through the silence. When I opened the door, his face was pale, almost guilty. You okay?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you see him?" He glanced over his shoulder, then leaned closer. Yeah. Not tonight only. A couple nights. Back alley, near your yard. Tall guy. Didn't move like a drunk or a thief, more like he knew exactly where he was going. My pulse pounded in my ears. And you didn't think to tell me sooner? He flinched at the bite in my voice, rubbing the back of his neck. Didn't want to scare you if it was nothing. But the way he looked around, like he was measuring the place, I knew it wasn't random. His words sank like a stone in my gut. You're telling me this now? After he was inside my house? He didn't answer. Just shifted his weight, eyes darting like he wanted to disappear. That night I sat in my living room with every light off. The bracelet lay on the coffee table, catching the faint glow of the street lamp outside. The house groaned with age, floorboards popping, pipes sighing, the roof cracking as if under pressure. Each sound sent my heart racing. I barely slept. Every creak was a footstep, every shadow a figure moving toward me. My body was a taut wire ready to snap. By morning, exhaustion sharpened into resolve. Whoever he wasn't just breaking in, he was digging into my past. My mother's bracelet wasn't about theft. It was about me. I started digging too. I called my aunt first. She muttered polite confusion, brushed me off with, "Sweetheart, you're overthinking." But when I mentioned the bracelet, her voice went quiet, clipped, like I'd touched a wound. Next I reached for a number I hadn't dialed in years, Uncle Robert. The line crackled, then a heavy, familiar voice. "Hello? Robert, it's me." My throat felt tight. "I need to ask you something strange." A pause. "You sound like your mother when you start like that. What's going on?" I swallowed. "A man came into my house. He left something. Mom's bracelet." Silence stretched. Too long. "Robert? He coughed, clearing his throat. "Maybe you just misplaced it." My grip tightened around the phone. "No. I didn't. He left it in my hand. Like he wanted me to know." Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear his breathing, shallow, uneven. "What did he look like?" Robert finally asked, voice lower now. I closed my eyes, replaying the shadow in my doorway. Tall. Calm. Like he belonged there. Cigarette smell. Dark jacket. Another cough, this one strained. Then nothing. He knew something. His silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, deliberate. My uncle wasn't confused. He was hiding. My hands trembled against the receiver. "Robert, you've seen him before, haven't you?" No answer. Just static. "Damn it, Robert, say something!" I heard him exhale, ragged, like dragging a secret out of his lungs. His words came slow, reluctant, nearly a whisper. "There are names you don't need to know." My heart hammered. "Then why is he in my house?" Another pause. Then, almost inaudible. "Because some things never stay buried. Robert, stop talking in riddles. Tell me who he is." The room around me blurred, my vision tunneling onto the phone in my hand. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, even my own breath, they all disappeared. All I heard was Robert's voice, strained, breaking. And then, after another long silence, he whispered a name I hadn't heard in years. "Mark." The line clicked dead, leaving me holding nothing but the echo of a ghost. Mark wasn't a stranger. He was a ghost from my family's past. The name rattled inside my skull like broken glass. Mark. A name I hadn't heard since childhood whispers at family gatherings, muttered arguments behind closed doors, and the kind of silence adults carried when they didn't want the children listening. Robert had hung up before I could ask more, but he didn't need to. The dread in his voice said everything. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at the phone, the bracelet still gleaming on the table beside me. It felt heavier now, as if it carried decades of rot I had been too young to understand. I dialed again, hands shaking. He answered on the third ring. "Robert, you don't get to drop a name and disappear." I snapped. He groaned. "You don't want this, trust me. I already have it." My voice cracked. "Who is he?" Silence again. Then his breath hissed through the receiver. "Your father's old partner. Business went bad. Greed, lies, betrayal, you name it. Mark lost everything, and he swore it was our fault. Your father's fault. My fault." I gripped the phone tighter. "But why me?" His hesitation sliced through me. "Because you're what's left. He obsesses. Always has. He doesn't forget slights, doesn't forgive debts. You're a reminder." A reminder. That word echoed through me. I wasn't a person to Mark. I was a symbol, a breathing target for an ancient grudge. "Robert," I whispered. "Why now? Why after all these years?" "Because he's patient." Robert said bitterly. Because control is the only thing he ever wanted, and now he thinks he's found a way to have it again. I looked around my living room, every corner suddenly sinister. The lamp cast shadows too deep. The curtains stirred though the windows were shut. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded menacing, like the low growl of something waiting. You knew he might come back, I accused. His voice cracked. We all prayed he wouldn't, but he did. And he's here. Yes. A beat. Then, quieter. And he's watching. The line went dead again, leaving me clutching the receiver like a lifeline. That night I couldn't escape it. Every creak of the house stretched my nerves thinner. I swore I saw movement in the backyard, a flicker near the fence line. The floorboards above groaned as though someone walked when I knew no one was there. I barely slept, lying awake, the bracelet inches from my bed, my mind replaying Robert's words. Mark wasn't after money, he was after me. The next morning, my neighbor spotted me outside, eyes ringed red. You look like hell, he said. Thanks, I muttered. Still about that guy. He has a name, I snapped, surprising even myself. Mark, he stiffened. Mark? That's who this is about. I narrowed my eyes. You know him? A long pause. His jaw worked, lips pressing together. Finally. I've heard stories about him watching people, showing up where he wasn't supposed to, dropping things, old belongings, just to mess with your head. Cold shot through me. Tokens. Yeah, tokens. His eyes darted away, nervous, as if even saying the word might summon Mark himself. So it wasn't just me. It was a pattern. A sick ritual. He didn't steal for gain, he stole for memory. To remind his victims of the past, to worm his way into their heads until fear became loyalty. And now, I was the chosen one. That night, I shut every lock, checked every window, left lights burning in every room. But it didn't matter. I could feel him, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against my back. The silence too sharp, broken only by the groan of wood and the faint whistle of wind under the door. I stood in the hallway, holding my mother's bracelet so tightly it dug crescents into my skin. My heart pounded, every nerve screaming. You're not real, I whispered into the dark. You're just a ghost. But even I didn't believe it. Because ghosts don't leave tokens. Ghosts don't stalk houses. Ghosts don't breathe outside your window. And Mark wasn't finished with me yet. The door was open, but nothing was stolen, except my past. The smell hit me first. Gasoline. Sharp, bitter, invasive. It clung to my throat, burning with every breath. I froze on the porch, the key still in my hand, my stomach twisting into knots. The front door hung half open, swaying gently as though someone had just walked through. I should have called the police. I should have turned around. But panic overruled logic, and my feet carried me inside. The living room looked the same at first glance. Couch, lamp, coffee table, everything in its place. But the silence was wrong. Too heavy. Too staged. Then I saw it. Every photo frame on the walls and shelves was empty. The glass glared back at me like mocking eyes, hollow and cold. My childhood, my family's smiles, birthdays, trips, the only proof we ever existed together, gone. The gasoline smell hung heavier in the hallway. Not spilled, just sprayed. A warning. My skin prickled as though fire already licked the walls. I stumbled back outside, fumbling for my phone, calling my neighbor. He answered on the second ring. You home? I demanded. Yeah, why? You see anything? My voice shook. A pause. Then, carefully. I saw him again. My grip tightened. Who? You know who. Mark. I felt my knees weaken. What was he doing? Walking calm as Sunday morning, he said bitterly. Had a bag slung over his shoulder. Didn't rush. Didn't hide. Just walked out like he owned the place. Not burglary. Not desperation. This was theater. He wanted me to know. Why didn't you stop him? I snapped. What was I supposed to do? Charge a lunatic? He looked different. Smiling, but not really. That kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I pictured it. His lips curved, but the muscles around his eyes twitching with something darker. My neighbor's voice dropped. I swear, it felt like he knew I was watching. Like the smile was for me too. That was the game. Not theft. Not violence. Manipulation. Control. He hadn't touched the TV, the jewelry, or the cash. He'd stolen what mattered most, the pieces of my history, and left gasoline like a promise. My rage boiled, clawing to the surface, but fear pressed it back down. Because I knew, rage was what he wanted, fear was what he fed on. That night, the air in my house was colder. Every creak of the floor echoed louder. My locks felt like toys. Even the glow of the streetlight outside looked foreign, throwing shadows across the walls like moving figures. I sat in the dark, back against the wall, every muscle stiff, clutching the phone like it might save me. Hours bled together. The smell of gasoline hadn't faded. It lingered like invisible smoke. Then I heard it. A faint scrape against the floor, right by the front door. The sound was deliberate, slow, like something being slid across wood. My heart slammed against my ribs, breath caught in my throat. Not again, I whispered, too afraid to move. The scrape stopped. Silence, then a soft flutter. I crawled forward, hand trembling, and there it was. A folded piece of paper, slid neatly under my door. The edges smudged, the ink bleeding faintly like it had been written in haste, or with a shaking hand. I opened it with fingers that didn't feel like my own. "You can't protect what's already mine." The words blurred as my vision swam. My pulse thudded so hard it hurt. He wasn't just after my belongings. He was claiming me, my life, my memories, my entire existence. But the worst part, the bottom of the note, one word, scrawled jaggedly, the ink darker, smeared as if pressed with force. "Soon." I dropped the note like it burned. But the word clung to me, etched into my chest, echoing in my head, a promise I couldn't escape. If Mark wanted a game, I'd give him one. My house would be the trap. Fear had drained from me, replaced by a burning, cold fury. Every detail he left behind, the gasoline, the empty frames, the jagged note, etched itself into my memory like a scar. I couldn't let him continue unchecked. Not again. Not me. I pulled out a notebook and began listing everything. The times he appeared, the sounds of his approach, the smells that clung to the air after he left. Gasoline, cigarette smoke, faint cologne. Each entry was precise, obsessive, almost like mapping his mind. I realized that obsession was the only weapon he had against me, but I could turn it back on him. The living room felt alive with anticipation. Shadows shifted as the evening sun faded through the curtains. My neighbor had set up cameras, small, blinking devices hidden in the corners. Their soft red lights were barely noticeable, but their presence made every movement in the room more charged, more deliberate. The house became my stage, each creak of the floorboard a note in the symphony I was composing. "Are you sure this will work?" I asked, my voice low, barely above the hum of the wiring. He adjusted a camera, his eyes narrowing. "It has to. We catch him in the act, get proof. He won't expect this." "I'm not just looking for proof," I said, placing the bracelet on the table. "I want him to feel what I felt." He paused, hesitating, then nodded. "Bait. Smart. He won't resist it." The bracelet, my mother's, the one he had used to taunt me before, sat there, glinting under the lamp. I could almost feel his eyes on it already, drawn to it like a moth to flame. Every fiber of my being hummed with anticipation. I replayed past encounters in my mind, the way he moved calmly, smiling yet tense, how he thrived on making me doubt my senses. Now, I flipped the script. I could control the stage, the timing, the rhythm. My heartbeat synced with the ticking of the clock. Waiting would be torture, but it was his game too, and I intended to win. The smell of old wood and polished floors mixed with the faint scent of my cleaning supplies. I touched the table, feeling the smooth surface beneath my fingers, imagining him reaching for it. Every shadow in the corners of the room seemed to twitch, alive with possibility. I even left a faint trail of the bracelet's perfume, subtle enough to catch him off guard but not reveal the setup. "Don't falter now," I whispered, pacing the room. "Every second counts. He can't win if he walks into this." I stopped in front of the window, peering into the dim street. Nothing moved. Nothing yet. My fists clenched, the tension coiling in my shoulders. "Come on, Mark. Let's see if you're as clever as you think." The night dragged on. I double-checked the cameras, ensuring angles captured every possible entry. I imagined him stepping through the door, smelling the faint perfume, seeing the bracelet. The power dynamic had shifted. No longer the hunted, I was the hunter. Every creak, every flicker of shadow was part of the performance I had orchestrated. I even rehearsed my reactions, anticipating his movements, planning pauses to lure him into a false sense of safety. Each tick of the clock brought him closer, or at least the promise of him. My neighbor watched silently, eyes alert, knowing that one wrong move could ruin everything. "He's unpredictable," he said softly. "Don't let him see you tremble." "I won't," I muttered, though my stomach fluttered with a mix of fear and excitement. "He'll learn fear soon enough, from me." Every detail mattered. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the subtle click of a light switch, the rhythm of my own breathing. I synchronized it all to maintain control. I left the living room dimly lit, the shadows lengthening toward the walls like claws. The bracelet glimmered in the soft light, waiting. The smell of old books and polished wood mingled with the faint residue of gasoline from his last intrusion. My mind played over it endlessly. How he lingered, how he watched, how he thrived on my dread. Not this time. Not me. And then, one night, the cameras lit up. Red blips flashed across the monitors. Motion. Movement. A shadow slipped through the entryway, calm, deliberate, confident. And in that instant I knew, Mark had walked into my web. Mark walked straight into my trap, but his smile never faded. The moment his shadow crossed the threshold, my pulse jumped into overdrive. I'd rehearsed this countless times in my mind, but seeing him in flesh, calm, deliberate, humming a low tune I couldn't place, made my stomach tighten. Every hair on my arm stood on end. The house that had once been a cage of fear now felt like a stage, and he had walked right onto it, oblivious to the cameras that documented his every move. I clenched my fists, imagining how each second was being recorded, how the motion sensors and hidden lenses would catch his reactions, every twitch of a muscle, every micro-expression. This was my moment, my revenge. The air smelled faintly of the lingering perfume I had left on the bracelet. Shadows stretched across the room, the dim light glinting off polished wood floors. Every creak, every subtle shift in the floorboards, felt amplified, like the house itself was watching. Outside, the wind whispered against the walls, but inside, the only sound was the rhythmic thump of my own heartbeat, echoing like a drum in my ears. He bent toward the bracelet, hand hovering over it, and I slammed the door behind him. The sound reverberated through the room like a gunshot. His eyes widened briefly, but the smile stayed. "You're late," he said, voice calm, teasing, almost bored. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "And you're early, right where I wanted you," I spat, trying to steady my shaking voice. He took a slow step back, then forward, circling the bracelet. "I see you've prepared a little stage for me. Cute. Predictable." I tried to ignore the shiver his words sent down my spine. "Not predictable. Calculated. And this time, I decide the rules." Every step he took, every slight twitch in his fingers, was catalogued in my mind. He lunged suddenly, a blur of movement, and my heart jumped, but this time I didn't flinch. I met his lunge with controlled steps, circling him, maintaining the distance I had planned. His breath hit sharp and animal-like, rattling my nerves, yet I reminded myself, I held the upper hand. I had the cameras, the plan, the element of surprise. The bracelet sat like a beacon in the center of the table, glinting under the lamp's soft glow. Shadows danced across the walls as his silhouette moved. The room felt alive with tension, thick and suffocating. I could almost hear the faint hum of the cameras, tiny red lights blinking silently, recording every movement, every subtle intimidation he attempted. The house wasn't silent, it was listening, watching, judging. "You think you can scare me with a trinket?" he asked, voice low, almost mocking. "I've danced this dance before." "Not this dance," I shot back, forcing myself to stay calm, to mask the quiver in my voice. "This time, you're stepping into my rhythm, my rules, my control." He chuckled softly, pacing the table with a predator's grace. "Control, that's funny. I've seen how fear lights you up. I feed off that. You've been training for this, haven't you? Every camera, every trap." His eyes glinted with something cold, unreadable. "You think it matters?" I swallowed hard, but didn't respond. My silence was the answer. He lunged again, faster this time, and I sidestepped, guiding him closer to the center of the room, right where every camera had a clear line of sight. Every breath he drew was sharp, measured, every movement deliberate. My palms were slick with sweat, but my mind was razor-sharp. I could feel his anticipation, his twisted confidence, and I used it against him. "You're enjoying this," he said, a dangerous gleam in his eyes. "This little game of cat and mouse. Admit it. You like it." I forced myself to remain composed. "No. I like control. And right now I have it." His smile faltered ever so slightly, a fraction of a second, but it was enough for me to notice, enough for me to know I was close. The cameras captured every subtle reaction, the flicker in his gaze, the twitch in his jaw, the way his hands flexed, ready to strike. He was skilled, experienced, but even skill had limits when the stage was set perfectly. I could almost taste victory, sharp and metallic, as if the night itself was charged with electricity. I smelled the faint trace of his cologne mixed with the lingering perfume of the bracelet. My stomach churned with adrenaline. Every shadow in the room seemed alive, every creak of the floor a whisper of my anticipation. I could feel the weight of the trap pressing down on both of us, tightening with each heartbeat. And then I saw it, movement behind him. Another shadow, silent, deliberate. My blood ran cold, because he wasn't alone. The shadow behind Mark was the man I once called family, Uncle Robert. My stomach dropped like a stone in icy water. Every warning I'd received, every uneasy feeling over the last weeks, it all converged in that single moment of horror. Robert had been silent, evasive, a ghost of distance during our calls and meetings. But now, there he was, stepping from the shadows, and the truth hit me with brutal clarity. It had all been a setup. I felt my chest tighten, the metallic tang of fear and adrenaline filling my mouth. Betrayal wasn't new, but this was personal. The man I had trusted implicitly, the one who had seemed like a distant, cautious uncle, was orchestrating my torment. My mind raced through memories of conversations, visits, his vague hints about family disputes. Every hesitation, every small, unhelpful answer, it had been deliberate. The room smelled of gasoline again, sharp and suffocating. Shadows from the overhead lamp stretched across the floor, swallowing parts of the furniture in darkness. The faint click of the security cameras behind me was almost deafening, a steady heartbeat recording every move. Outside, the wind rattled the windows like anxious fingers, and inside, the house seemed to pulse with tension, alive with anticipation. Robert's face was unreadable, though his eyes held a glimmer of triumph. "I didn't think you'd figure it out this quickly," he said, voice low and controlled. "Mark's methods, let's just say, they were efficient." I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my voice steady. You brought him back? You've been helping him all along?" He stepped closer, forcing the truth into the open, his shadow stretching over the table where the bracelet Saturday. "We had to, didn't we? This family has too much history, too many secrets. You think you could just inherit it all?" Mark chuckled softly, pacing behind him like a predator enjoying the tension. "She's strong, I'll give her that. But the plan, Uncle Robert, is flawless." The betrayal cut deeper than any fear Mark had instilled. I felt like I had been wading through a river of deception only to be pulled under by someone I loved. My hands were trembling, but I gritted my teeth. No collapse, no panic. I had one advantage they didn't know. Every word they spoke, every sinister smirk, was being recorded. I had my recorder in my pocket, a tiny device I had hidden for emergencies. If nothing else, this would be evidence, a weapon I could use to expose them. I reminded myself to breathe, to focus on collecting proof, and to channel the anger boiling inside me. Fear had no place here, not yet. The smell of gasoline was thicker now, acrid and clinging to my clothes, making my eyes water. Shadows warped as the trio circled the room, their movements deliberate, calculated. The bracelet glinted ominously on the table, a lure that had brought both predator and traitor into my space. Every step echoed in the quiet house, the sound magnified by the tight tension hanging in the air. "You trusted me," Robert said, voice a whisper that cut sharper than any scream. "I warned you about family loyalty, about greed, about ambition. But you never listened. You thought I was different. You were supposed to be family." I spat, the words trembling but fierce. "You were supposed to protect me." He shrugged, an almost casual gesture, and leaned closer. "Family? That word means nothing when there's power at stake. Mark and we're just reclaiming what was always ours." Mark chimed in, his tone almost conversational. "You can scream, struggle, plead, doesn't matter. You stepped into our world now. There's no backing out." I felt fury rising, mingled with a careful awareness of my surroundings. They had underestimated me. They had relied on fear as a weapon. But I wasn't powerless. Every step they took, every word they spoke, was being captured. I could see the slight tension in Robert's jaw, the way Mark's eyes flicked toward the camera. They didn't know how much I had prepared. I pressed my hand into my pocket, feeling the recorder's reassuring weight. My mind raced. How could I turn this betrayal into leverage? How could I take what they thought was their control and flip it entirely? The lamp above us flickered for a second, casting Robert's face in jagged shadows. The gasoline smell stung my nostrils, making each breath sharp and deliberate. My heart hammered in my chest like a warning drum, syncing with the faint whir of the cameras. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of fabric as Mark shifted, felt magnified, a symphony of tension playing just for me. I forced a calm that I didn't feel, keeping my hand in my pocket on the recorder. Every word they uttered was mine now, every betrayal captured. And as Robert leaned in closer, smiling with cruel satisfaction, I reminded myself, the recording was still running. Their voices betrayed them louder than I ever could. I pressed the play button, and the room filled with the words they had spoken just minutes before. Every deceit, every cruel plan, every smug justification for what they thought was mine to lose. It was loud, impossible to ignore. My hands were trembling, but this tremor wasn't fear. It was the electric thrill of control finally shifting in my favor. I had imagined this moment countless times, pacing the floor late at night, whispering strategies to myself, replaying every slight from Robert, every calculated grin from Mark. And now it was happening, not in my mind, but in reality, as the villains themselves became their own undoing. The sound echoed off the walls, ricocheting through the room, sharp and relentless. The smell of gasoline lingered faintly, a reminder of how close I had been to disaster, mingling with the metallic tang of adrenaline. Shadows leapt across the walls with the flicker of the overhead light. The bracelet lay untouched on the table, an innocent sentinel to the chaos about to unfold. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind outside, amplified the tension, a cinematic score to a scene of reckoning. Mark's voice erupted first, cracking under the pressure. This isn't fair. You can't do this to me. Robert interjected, voice tense, eyes darting as if searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. Mark, calm down. This isn't how we handle it. Mark's glare snapped toward him, wild and desperate. Calm down? Calm down? You think I'll just let her? His words shattered into a bark of rage as he lunged, fists flailing, but Robert grabbed him, struggling to restrain his own creation. I stayed still, my heart thudding, eyes scanning for every micro-expression, every small slip that revealed panic and fear where there should have been control. Robert's lips trembled, a forced calm masking the storm within. Mark's breaths were uneven, animalistic, filled with fury and disbelief. This was more than I had hoped for, their alliance unraveling like a thread pulled too tightly. Fear, anger, and desperation collided, and they were eating themselves alive. The noise of the struggle was almost cinematic, a violent ballet of betrayal made flesh. I could feel my pulse sinking with the chaos, a quiet, vengeful satisfaction warming me from inside. I thought back to every insult, every stolen moment of peace, every note Mark had slipped under my door. All those attempts to control me, to make me bow to their whims, now crumbling under their own hubris. They had underestimated the simple truth: the more you rely on fear to hold power, the quicker it consumes you. The room was tight with tension. Dust motes floated in the lamplight, catching brief glimmers like fleeting moments of clarity. The sound of shouts, scuffling feet, and strained breathing filled the space. Outside, neighbors began gathering, drawn by the commotion, their voices blending with the chaos inside. The air was thick, electric, almost stifling. I could hear the faint crackle of static from the recorder, a reminder that the evidence was preserved, their words immortalized. "Stop it! Stop fighting!" Robert yelled, but his command was weak, powerless. Mark snapped, eyes wide, pupils dilated. "She thinks she's won. She thinks." He lurched forward, hands clawing at the air, and tripped over a rug, crashing into a chair. "You fool!" Robert yelled, trying to steady him, but even his voice carried panic now. I couldn't help the small, sharp laugh that escaped me. They were destroying themselves. Every boast, every threat, every calculated smirk, it was crumbling in real time, exposed and vulnerable. I stayed calm, almost detached, letting them implode. This wasn't about my strength, not entirely. It was about their inability to control what they had created. Rage had become their undoing. And I was here, watching the slow-motion collapse, recording every detail, knowing it would never be denied, never be questioned. I reminded myself that I had planned meticulously, yes, but the true downfall came from their own hubris. Every movement, every shout, every wild lunge, they were orchestrating their own demise. The lamp flickered again, shadows twisting grotesquely across walls and floor. The faint gasoline smell mingled with sweat and tension, forming an olfactory marker of chaos. Outside, the gathered crowd murmured, their presence like a chorus to the unraveling, echoing the truth that Mark and Robert could no longer control the narrative. Even as their alliance shattered, Mark's eyes met mine, wide and wild, still burning with fury. He wasn't done fighting. Not yet. And I knew deep down that this battle, this reckoning, was far from over. For a moment I thought it was over. I was wrong. The sound of sirens had faded hours ago, leaving only the echo of Mark and Robert's shouts bouncing in my ears. The police had taken them away, handcuffed and defeated, but the memory of Mark's wild eyes and Robert's trembling lips stayed with me. I exhaled slowly, letting the silence of my home settle around me like a fragile shield. My heart, still pounding from the chaos, began to synchronize with the quiet, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the wall clock, the subtle creak of the floorboards, as if the house itself was breathing relief. Weeks passed, and the routine of daily life began to stitch itself back together. I walked past the empty spaces on the shelves, past the scattered photos I had reclaimed, and finally felt the lightness of breathing in a home free from their immediate terror. And yet, something in me remained alert. Something told me that the fight was not truly over, that shadows sometimes linger longer than expected. The air smelled faintly of dust and pine cleaner, a domestic normalcy that felt almost foreign after weeks of adrenaline. The sunlight streamed weakly through the blinds, cutting golden stripes across the hardwood floor. Every surface, every object seemed imbued with the calm after a storm, but the faintest wisp of smoke, so subtle it almost seemed imagined, snaked around the corners, a ghostly reminder of past fires. I remembered the last words Mark had spat in my face as he was dragged away. "You think this ends here? You haven't seen the last of me." His voice cracked, uneven, but there was venom beneath the desperation. Robert had tried to maintain a semblance of control. "Mark, wait!" But even his tone betrayed panic, and the officer's firm grip had ended the pretense. I had stayed silent, recording every word, every tremor of fear in their expressions, every fleeting micro-expression that revealed their inner turmoil. Now, replaying it in my mind, I realized that justice had not needed my vengeance, it had simply been inevitable. Yet, deep down, I knew that absence didn't equate to safety. There's a peculiar kind of dread that settles in when the threat is removed but the possibility lingers. It's in the creak of a door, the whisper of wind through the cracks, the silence that screams louder than any shout. Then it came, a subtle, almost invisible shift in the air. My heart skipped a beat before I noticed the envelopes sliding under the door, moving with the quiet inevitability of a serpent. My hands shook as I bent to retrieve it, the thin paper whispering like a warning against my palms. The envelope smelled faintly of smoke, acrid and intimate, as if it had been carried through fire and still clung to its essence. The texture of the paper was rough, uneven, like it had been handled too much, and the jagged handwriting made my stomach tighten. I could feel the weight of every past encounter in that single object. I unfolded the note carefully, almost reverently, and read the words aloud in a trembling whisper. "You think you've won, but I never lose." I shivered. The handwriting was unmistakably Mark's, jagged and mocking. Every curve of the letters dripped with menace, every smudge a faint echo of past violence. I pressed the note to my chest, my thoughts racing. "Mark, this isn't over?" The letter seemed to almost hiss at me, daring me to underestimate the threat that still lingered. I realized then that freedom was a fragile construct. Weeks of calm had lulled me into a false sense of victory, but this small, incendiary act reminded me that some nightmares never truly end. They lie in wait, patient, silent, watching. I had survived the chaos, outmaneuvered the villains, yet the psychological shadow they left behind was stubborn and unrelenting. I stared at the note again, the words burned into my memory. "I never lose." I could almost hear Mark's laughter, low and cruel, echoing from the corners of the room. The faint smell of smoke teased my senses, tying the memory of fear to the present, a reminder that danger often leaves its scent long after the threat seems gone. The room felt smaller, closer, the shadows of the blinds now sharper, cutting lines across the walls like prison bars. A cold draft slipped under the door, mingling with the lingering smoke smell, sending a chill down my spine. Every fiber of my being tightened, alert, listening for movement that wasn't there. The bracelet I had used as bait gleamed faintly on the table, a silent witness to both the past and the possible future. I refolded the letter carefully, sliding it back into the envelope. The final words stared at me from the page, cruel and absolute. "Forever." And in that instant I knew this shadow, Mark's shadow, would haunt me indefinitely. The nightmare had paused, but it had not ended.